Okay, so we're gonna talk about some fun stuff today. So I was sitting around and I went through a lot of shit, right? I went through a lot of shit in life, and I'm just gonna say what I've learned, right? I'm just gonna say what I've learned. Let's fix the screen we got here. I'm just gonna say what I've learned. I think it might help, and it's the biggest enemy, or no, your biggest enemy is yourself. It is my own internal dialogue of self hatred, criticism, doubt, and inability to trust myself. Jobs to protect ourselves from others' harsh opinions and about us that are not true. Yep, exactly. So here's what I'm gonna mention. So what our biggest enemy is ourself, and the reason why is because our biggest critic is ourself, and the reason specifically why we think all these things like anxiety, you think about the people around you, you're thinking about your environment. Usually when you're scared of something, it's caused from anxiety. You're worried of what might go wrong, but you don't actually know what might go wrong. It's a prediction. You can't understand everything that's around you to the point where you can read their minds. So the idea is when somebody doesn't like you, 90% of the time, you might be thinking someone doesn't like you when only 10% of those times they actually don't like you. Or if in the case they actually didn't like you, you could be in a skewed environment, or an echo chamber, or a group that is toxic for you, a toxic environment that you might not fit in. And what happens there is that now, instead of it realistically being only 10%, about 50 or 90% of what you think is actually true now. So 90% of people now actually hate you. And then what that makes you do is you start going into a normal environment, or you think there's no better environment, or you think you can't find a better environment, and you're stuck where you are, and you just get depressed, and you just keep getting worse and worse, and your emotions become worse over the years, and you just feel worse and worse. You're super negative, you get really jaded, and you get tired. So the idea is being able to learn all these different environments and being able to understand about all the people around you and being able to relate to people around you. So, like the best like medicine in a term of figuring out if you're in a good environment or not is by switching the environment to something more public, or switching the environment to something you can understand, and being able to properly discern the world around you. Because what you might discern as the world around you in a small, closed off group is going to be different in a different small, closed off group. And those are what we call echo chambers. Echo chambers is where you can actually share bad habits with each other, and you end up becoming maybe a worse person in a different environment than another. So the idea is you want to become who you want to become. So your biggest enemy is yourself. Your second biggest enemy is your environment. And so the second biggest enemy is your environment, because it can go back to yourself, and then yourself is still your biggest enemy, but the environment provokes those negative thoughts to be true. If the more of those negative thoughts to be true, then the more you think those negative thoughts are fact. But a negative thought isn't fact, it's anxiety, it's something to protect you. It's something to make sure you know you're in the wrong. But in the instance of, oh, you're not in the wrong, or no, you're not a bad person, when you think you're a bad person, it does more damage than it does good. So I basically am just saying this so you guys are like aware of, like, as I like to call it, the bare basics of keeping yourself safe. Uh, One is keeping who you are, right? Keep staying who you are. You don't want an echo chamber to change you to who you do not want to be. So you always keep your options open. You always have like other people to talk to. If somebody tells you like go speak to a therapist, if you're comfortable speaking to a therapist, go ahead and do that. But here's my mention. If you have a negative thought is provoked by your environment, switch environments and see if that negative thought is still true. If it's still true, then work on yourself. If you work on yourself and then people like you more in like a more of a public environment, then you can figure out like now you go back to that negative environment. If they don't like you and you're now more likable overall in a public environment, that means it's the group and it's not specifically you. It's you have to figure out if you're the problem in the environment, if you fit in the environment, or if like the problem isn't you but is the environment itself. Those are like the three things. So I just wanted to mention that because I think this is like kind of badly needed to be like mentioned because there's a lot of people that hit like a really bad point, and when I specifically talk to them, I kind of try to figure out like is it like what hit them to the point of self-value. Oh, another thing is like when you're in a negative environment and you look down on yourself constantly, it decreases your self-value to the point where you don't know what to do. Like you just specifically like lose all your self-value and you lose all your confidence where you're even further locked into that group because you don't think you have a better place to go. But the idea is being able to extract yourself from the environment and throw yourself into a different one and work on fitting into that environment but not changing yourself. The more you try to change yourself to fit an environment when it doesn't feel right to you, the more you hurt yourself. But the more you change yourself to fit in an environment that you actually enjoy, you actually want to be, it's a you thing, like you want to be that way and it feels good to be that way, then go for it. Because here's the thing, your biggest enemy is yourself, meaning you can completely destroy yourself, but your biggest friend is also yourself in the sense of being able to properly be yourself, being able to look at your environment and actually switch your environment. Because if your biggest enemy can be yourself, your biggest friend can also be yourself. But you have to look at your fall down. If you know what you fall into, if you fall into a pit, you know about that pit, you can walk around that pit. Or if you fall into the pit, you can go down a hallway and check what's in this other pit and see if there's an elevator. Because that when you go in there and you see an elevator, you go up the elevator, now you're out of the pit. Now you're out of your anxiety. But that's the thing. The more you think, the higher chance you have anxiety. So every time you have anxiety, prove your anxiety wrong. You can prove it wrong. Because the more times you prove it wrong, is more times your anxiety becomes more accurate. And the more accurate your anxiety becomes, the more capable you are of improving yourself and the more capable you are of actually valuing yourself appropriately. Now, a thing about value, you don't value people, right? You can self-value. It's good to have self-value, but never value someone else underneath yourself if it is within a conversation. That's rude. Uh, if you're talking to several people, understand you're all people. You all have your problems. You all have your different, like, you all have your different lives to live. But understand that your self value has to be the first thing that you care about. Because if that other person is not treating you as an equal and they're disregarding you and they're either not talking to you but talking to your value instead of who you are yourself, then those are people to avoid because they're not actually there for you. so you shouldn't be there for them. Just a simple thing is with that as well. So I hope that helps. Yeah, I'm done.